Hey everyone, Wang here, and I'm back at it again with another one! With competitive matchmaking being available for some time now, I thought it'd be fitting I do a video talking about the latest patch, the state of competitive, placement games, true skill rating, and how to improve at the game, and subsequently how to improve your skill rating. So patch 1.051b was recently released, and I'm happy with the direction Blizzard seems to be taking. In this patch, Blizzard looks to start fixing two of the biggest problems with competitive at the moment. The first being the sudden death mechanic. I, for one, am personally not a fan of the current sudden death mechanic. I would much prefer to see control maps such as Ilios be the tiebreaker for sudden deaths. In a blue post by head developer Jeff Kaplan, this was actually the first version of sudden death in the beta. But there was a ton of negative feedback from players because people didn't like playing on a different map, and they didn't like that it was a different game mode. So while it might not have been ideal that it was a different map and different game mode, it's still a map and mode that everyone should know how to play because you're unable to veto maps. So there is no inherent advantage for one side or the other, and there would be no need for any coin flip mechanic, which is not healthy for any type of competitive play. In another blue post by Jeff Kaplan stated that, "We know the win rates on attack and defend on all maps, and we normalize accordingly. Not all wins and losses are equal. And I think the sudden death format we have now is very good, and it's actually much more balanced, and I'm looking at real stats here, than players are exaggerating it to be. However, it's clear that players, at least the vocal ones, are largely not pleased with any form of coin flip or any form of asymmetrical resolution to the maps. So, as I mentioned before, I do fall into this category of disagreeing with any form of asymmetrical resolution. Blizzard have done an amazing job balancing sudden death with the exception of King's Row, which I believe to be heavily attack-sided. But no matter how much data Blizzard have, it's impossible to balance to a complete 50-50 on escort and hybrid maps, because the whole concept of these maps is that one side attacks and the other side defends, two entirely different concepts. And when it comes down to a tie between two teams, you shouldn't be using two entirely different concepts that are chosen at random to decide who wins in that tie. For those unhappy with the current sudden death mechanic, there is some good news long term though. Because we received a lot of positive feedback on the new assault map format, we are going to try and apply the same time bank system to escort and hybrid maps. What this means is that if both teams push the payload all the way to the end of the map with time left over, you'll go into a second round on the same map. We'll remember how much time was on the clock for each team, and then you'll have that amount of time to push the payload as far as possible. At the end of the second round, we'll also look at how far your team pushed the payload versus how far the enemy team pushed their payload. Push it farther than the other team and you win. So right off the bat, I'm already a huge supporter of this new idea. There is no advantage for one team or the other, and sudden death will still be played out in the same map and mode. Best of all, there is no coin flip mechanic. Overall, it's a fantastic idea, and I can't wait to see this change go live. The other big changes in this patch were the changes to lever penalties. Basically, players who have honest disconnects for whatever reason no longer get penalized if they manage to fix the problem and rejoin the match. I'm really glad to see these changes being made. It really made no sense to punish people for honest disconnecting errors, especially if they made the effort to come back and finish the game. It was really discouraging and counterintuitive for players to come back and finish their games they had disconnected from if they were going to receive a loss either way. Overall, Blizzard's first season may not have been perfect and had flaws of its own, but they've implemented changes in the right direction and with adequate response time. So that's it for patch analysis. It was a rather short one. Now, let's talk about placement games and skill rating. Of course, when competitive came out, I had to jump into it right away. I'm an extremely competitive person by nature, and I even have plans to start a team and compete in tournaments. In my first 10 placement games, I had gone 7-3, and I calibrated at a skill rating of 52. In all 10 games, I had played with a group of friends of 4 or more, and everyone in the group calibrated fairly evenly, all within 2 skill rating of each other. Since calibration, I've managed to hit a skill rating of 67, mostly by playing solo queue to 60, and mostly dual queue with a friend of similar rating from 60 onwards, with occasional group play here and there. My current skill rating goal is 70, and as I'm getting closer to my goal, I'm meeting some really talented teammates and facing some real tough opponents. For future videos, I'll definitely be posting some highlights of my competitive matchmaking games, with some analysis and commentary, and maybe even record some voice chat to give you guys a first-hand experience on how communication is in my games. Because of how relatively new competitive matchmaking is at the moment, all the data Blizzard have on players aren't going to be completely accurate. For instance, when I had calibrated at 52, I felt that I was much lower than where I should have been placed. No one knows exactly how your skill rating is determined during placement matches, besides the developers at Blizzard themselves, but performance in-game, in terms of damage done, eliminations, objective time, healing done, does seem to impact your skill rating to some degree. When you calibrate your skill rating, it most likely isn't going to be 100% accurate, which brings me to true skill rating. True skill rating is just a term I'm going to be using for the purpose of this video, but refers to the idea of where your skill rating should actually be in terms of your skill level. Blizzard's placement matches have a lot of factors to account for. Maybe you had a lever in your placement matches, or uncooperative teammates who just troll. And, after browsing a bit on Reddit, I see that this is a prevalent problem at lower skill rating levels. But besides from levers and trolls, maybe your best role happens to be tank, but the roles were always filled up, leaving you unable to play to the best of your potential. Which is why I recommend players branch out in different roles and be versatile. Or maybe you and your teammates were having a bad game and underperforming. Or the opposite was true, and you had teammates who carried you to victory requiring very little effort of your own. These are all factors that the game can account for, giving you a rating that might not accurately reflect your skill level. And if you're like myself and want to improve at the game as much as possible, the most efficient way to do this is by getting your true skill rating. Let's say in terms of skill level, you're a skill rating 50 player, but you calibrate at a skill rating of 60. While having a bigger number might make your career profile look nice for all of those who see it, if you were to actually play in a game with other skill rating 60 players, you will get crushed. You will most likely find little to no eliminations and find yourself dying a lot. And if you're always dying, a lot of the time spent in game is respawning and walking back to the objective instead of actually playing the game. There is little opportunity to improve when you're playing against players who are vastly superior to you. Now, instead, let's go into the opposite direction and say you calibrate at 40. You will get matched up against players who are noticeably less skilled than you are. You will sweep through the games easily and carry your teammates and receive praise from everyone in the game about how good you are. Or, people will get salty and curse at you. While you might get a sense of achievement, you actually aren't improving at all. All you're learning to do is beat players who you're already better than. And when it comes time to face off against players your actual skill level, you'll begin to notice things like the enemies stop making mistakes you're so used to taking advantage of. Also, at lower skill rating, players tend to not punish your mistakes as heavily. This can lead to forming bad habits that become unnoticed because you're always getting away with it. Bad habits that are not only hard to get rid of, but are opportunities that better players can and will take advantage of. So what can you do? If you genuinely want to improve, the best way to go about it would be to solo queue a couple games until you come to a stable number that doesn't drastically change within a few games. I would also recommend solo queue, because in group play your friends most likely don't have an accurate skill rating either, which might lead to one person in the group to carry the rest, which, as I've gone over previously, is counterintuitive for those who want to improve their own game. Now there are going to be people who say, I only play with groups because whenever I play in pubs, there are levers and trolls. While this is true, this is going to be true for pretty much any online gaming community. It's a problem that's been a problem since the beginning of online gaming, and you have to ask yourself, if you genuinely want to improve, are you going to let a few game ruiners out there stop you from doing so? If so, you probably don't have the motivation to improve, and my methods won't be able to help you. Once you've stabilized your skill rating and begin playing against players who are at your skill level, you'll find that you have to put in the work to achieve victories, and you'll find yourself dying an adequate number of times, leading you to ask yourself what you could have done differently for a better outcome. While it might make you feel good to rewatch your play of the game of you getting a quad kill, it's even more important to go over your mistakes. Watch and analyze kill cam footage, or record your own gameplay footage like I do, and go over your deaths, because you first have to realize what your mistakes were before you can fix them. The most important thing about improving your game is to go at it with patience. For now, don't worry about the skill rating number so much. Skill rating can drop due to a number of reasons. Whether it be teammates tilting,
good thing we have a tour,
being screwed over by a coin flip mechanic,
Let's see who wins the coin flip.
or maybe you're just going down to your actual true skill rating. Even if the number that arbitrarily represents your skill says you're going down, your actual skill level can't get worse as you play. Once you improve your game in the areas that need to be improved and fix mistakes that need to be fixed, you'll notice your skill rating will go up. You probably won't see drastic improvements overnight. The important thing to remember is to keep at it until you're satisfied. That's it for this video, guys. If you've hopped on competitive, be sure to let me know in the comments how your placement matches went and what rating you calibrated at. And, if any, what your skill rating goals are. I'd be happy to help anyone actively looking to improve their game with some tips and advice. I'd also be more than willing to create a guide for anyone looking to improve at a particular hero or aspect of the game. So feel free to hit me up with some suggestions. And, as we come to a close of yet another video, I just want to remind everyone, as always, to stay frosty.